I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Doman, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, I want to welcome Adam Caplan to Pro Mindset Podcast. I've known Adam for maybe 10 or...
Sounds about right. It's 10 years plus.
About
sure.
10 years, yeah. And Adam, why don't you share for the audience kind of your history as an NFL media guy, the different positions you've had.
Okay.
Obviously, you've been big time at ESPN and some of the other things you've done.
So I started, Craig, back in, goodness gracious, this is 1996. I was covering, you want to call it covering, I actually was writing about fantasy football. My nephew started his own newsletter. This is when people started playing it, and my nephew started one of the first pay services. So he asked me to write for him. So I did. My nephew, Sam, who would later become an MMA promoter, believe it or not. Funny how things work out. So long story short, I did that. Then I became a partner about 5 years later with Jay Glazer and Steve Cohen. We ran a company called footballinjuries.com. Cohen was one of the foremost authorities for injury information. Then I got into it. I became a guy who did a lot of information on injuries. I was pretty good at sort of forecasting and getting good information to report. So that was in the early 2000s. And then Steve went to Sirius. Jay went to Fox. I would eventually go to Fox. Then I would go to ESPN, work with Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen, Ed Werder, and all my friends there. I've been a reporter for around 20 years, and I've done local TV, local radio, national radio for Sirius. I'm on the Fantasy Channel. So I'm still doing radio. I left ESPN in April of 17, and I'm doing mostly radio now. I do a podcast, kind of like you're doing. I do one in Philly for WIP, which is one of the top sports stations in the country. I do sideline reporting for the Arena Football League, the Philadelphia Soul. And I tried my hand, and I really enjoyed it. I did actually play-by-play for the first time since high school. Did that for the American Flag Football League, which is on NFL Network. I did that for the regionals last year at the Jets Complex in May. I should be doing it again. So what I've learned about it is that you've always got to have an open mind to try something different. And it was thrown my way. I tried it. I loved it. And here I am.
Well, one of the things I can say about Adam is, in working with the media for over 25 years and at variety of levels, the national level, the local level, those guys are critical too because they usually have the inside scoop on what's going on with a particular organization. You've always been one of those guys in the know, always. So share with our audience, what do you do to network and have relationships with people in the NFL?
So for instance, you called me about Chris Chester years ago. You said, hey, give me an idea of what teams will be interested. I said, give me a couple weeks. Give me 10 days to 2 weeks. So what I told you, I was like, okay, I think Atlanta, might have been Atlanta.
It was.
I gave you the teams that I thought were interested. Philly. You talk to personnel people, coaches, just people I trust. And I have like a network of sources that people that are good, either good evaluators or who get me good information. I was like, here's what this particular team is looking at. They're looking for a center guard. Oh, well, boy, Chris Chester could do both. So that helps you. So it's just over time, I started in the early 2000s of getting to know people. And you know this because you have to get information for your draftees, your clients. You start to figure out who knows what and who doesn't know what, who doesn't know what they're talking about. So you have like a list of people, then you dwindle it down to maybe 10 to 12 people in the league that you really trust, who have good information. They're going to tell you the truth. That's the key. Because I'm sure you go through this as an agent. Like if you have a client, you want to go to people and say, okay, tell me about my client. Can this guy play? Is he as good as I think he is? Because I'm his agent. I want him to be good. But again, I'm not the one who's going to pay him. You are. So could you give me an honest evaluation? So that's what I look for in sources. Tell me about this player. What do I need to know? What systems does he fit? And then you run it by, you talk to these teams, hey, you guys have an open guard, what do you think of this player? They don't know why I'm asking. They have no idea that I'm asking, it could be, I'm trying to find out about your client, see where he fits. And it's kind of like, it's not hard to do. I can't report any of it yet. I have to hold it, close to my vest, but it gives me an idea from a positional standpoint. Okay, this team needs a guard. This team, they'll tell me, what are their needs for free agency? Okay, we need a quarterback, we need a guard, we need a backup quarterback. Where a kicker stinks, we need a kicker. whatever it is, and then you gather it. When I'm done with you, and I have another meeting, tonight I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours on my free agency board, kind of where I think from my meetings with people, where I think this team is headed, what positions do they need. They've kind of told me already. They're not going to tell me who they like yet. I'll figure that out because, as you know, of managing players in free agency, there's so much money you can goes around because of the salary cap, and more often than not, they want younger players. They don't really want to sign players in their 30s unless the roster's so bad. Like the Raiders last season, they had to do it. So that's kind of what I do.
So let's talk about, we're at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and the media is really focused on two things. They're focused on either free agency or the rookies. Let's talk about the rookies for a moment. Let's say you're speaking to an audience of potential Combine attendees in the future, and they know that this is a media event. What advice would you give a young man from University of X who's coming to Indianapolis to do this Combine thing?
It's a good question because I remember when I came here in 2002, I had no idea what I was doing or what to expect. This is my 18th Combine, or 1 or 2. I know this is my 18th. So what I would tell you is if you're just a fan and you're getting access to watch inside, understand it's not real football. They call it the underwear Olympics, which I think is kind of funny. But you're looking to see, by position, how fast does this guy get off? You're going to watch the workouts, whether it's on NFL Network or ESPN, or you're going to see him live because fans get in. Let's say it's a receiver. You want to see how fast he gets off. Does he explode? Because I get in on Saturdays, and the receivers and quarterbacks work out together, and I could tell when on his 10 yards, I don't need a clock. I could see if the guy got off fast. And because I'm not tying myself, and they announce it, I'll go, okay, I was a little bit off on the overall 40 time, but you could see the 10. If the guy doesn't explode off, his 10 probably won't be good. Lower body explosion, when you see vertical, you want to see that, how they explode out of their stance. Those type of things. It's all pretty much logic. Although I would argue that I think you could poke holes in a 40, because there's so many players at receiver who have run in the mid 4.5s, and you'd rather run the mid 4.6s. They still became really good football players. So
Bolden,
who ran a 4.7. So it just goes by the position. Look, there are anomalies at every position. Offensive linemen, the phrase that personnel people give me is, how do they get out of an awkward stance? And you've had linemen, you know that they've got to get up, and they don't look like, they don't want to look like they're shaking. They want to get up naturally. That's when you could see if they have good feet. So those are kind of the things that you look for. When you take it all in for the first time, it's a lot. I'm sure people watch it on NFL Network, but seeing it live is a different thing because you get a different view. Now, I get access. I get in to see the workouts on Saturday. I have to put my glasses on because my eyesight's not as good as it used to be. And it's cool. I mean, it's really cool. And the nice thing is when you're there, you can see the kids' faces and how much it means to them, which is always nice.
Well, let's talk about your athleticism. What's the over and under on your 40 time?
My 40, well, now at 53, it would be certainly over a 5. Maybe it would be a 6. I probably, in my 30s, when I was much better physical shape, probably could 5.2, I think. Now, definitely a 6. Now, if you give me, I'm about 227. If I got down to 200, I'd break a 6. I think I can get the low 5s. I do, but I'm not. I'm a walker. I hate running, by the way. Hate it, despise it. My wife and I walk. We walk about 2 miles. I love walking. I just don't like running. It's too boring for me. When I walk, I don't know about you, I like to think about what's going on in my life, my career, just clear my thoughts. That's why I like doing it, other than it's good for my physical shape. So to answer your question, no, I would not. I don't know if I could break 6. I can't beat Rich Eisen because he trained specifically in a suit for this, which is insane. It's very cool, though.
He runs in
for good
dress
cause.
shoes. It's for a great cause.
Don't get hurt, though. Man, that's what scares me about him doing that. How do you not pull a hamstring? Didn't he pull a hamstring one time?
Might have a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so when these young men come to the Combine, let's focus on the Combine just for a moment. How can a young man who comes to the Combine, there's 330 of them, 338 I believe this year, and generally around 330 every year, how can he make a difference? How can he separate himself from everyone else in terms of dealing with the media?
I think being honest, when you're a player who's had off-the-field issues, and everyone knows it because we live in the media world now, it's on Twitter, the information is readily available, you're probably going to be asked about it, so just own up to it. Just talk about the situation. In fact, because everyone's going to know about it, get right at it. Hey, for those people, because I know I'm going to be asked, here's what happened in this particular situation. Own up to it, because you diffuse it. But if you don't own up to it or you try to avoid it, you're just going to make it worse. So I think doing it that way, I think that's the best way to do it. And try to show them as much as you can of who you are as a person, which, by the way, you're going to have to do in these interviews. In these 50-minute interviews you have with teams, you want to show them who you are. So I think they have to take the same sort of approach to it.
So pro mindset is about the mind, and it's about the mindset. And when you look at NFL players that have performed at a high level, been all pro, played more than a decade, those types of guys, what do you think the separator is in terms of mindset between those players and the guys that maybe don't play as long?
I would say because obviously talent is number one. I mean, obviously if you're not talented, you're probably not going to make it. It's the supreme confidence that you know you can get the job done, and no matter what happens, you're going to be sort of undaunted or undeterred. And it's no different no matter what you do in life. We're all going to go through ups and downs. We're all going to fail. This is the way it is. Even the best of us fail. I mean, but you pick yourself up, understand that things are going to happen that you may not have control over, and you don't worry about it. You just keep going. And I think that's the thing that I've learned in my life, is that things are going to happen that you don't have control over. When I was laid off at ESPN, I mean, it sucked, but I took it in stride. I didn't let that stop me. And I did stuff during my hiatus, so to speak, off television. But I never let stuff I don't control bother me. Because things are going to happen. The problem in my 20s was that I didn't know what I didn't know was a lot. Things were happening. I didn't know how to handle it. And I'm glad you asked about this. It's hard now because of social media and all that kids have to deal with. You and I are not that far apart in age. We didn't have to deal with this stuff. It was like, I couldn't imagine. Like, for instance, when I was laid off at ESPN, a lot of us, because we were laid off at the same time, announced it. I had to work, so I decided to wait a couple days. A media writer texts me. He goes, "Hey, is this true that you're laid off?" And I didn't answer it. I'm like, this is crazy. Someone's going to break the news on my career? I'm like, this is absurd. I couldn't even process it. I was so mad. I put it out on Twitter immediately, and I made a couple spelling mistakes, but I was so pissed off. Like, this is what we have to deal with now. And I know you have young kids who are in their 20s. Like, I couldn't imagine my life out there. And I try to limit the amount of information that's out there on me, because I want to control my own life and my own career. So this is what we're dealing with now. So I think when you look at these kids that are coming to the combine, if I had an issue, I'm going to go, "Hey guys, just so you know, this happened to me. It's true. I made a mistake. Here's what I was thinking when I did it. It's stupid. I need to grow up," and that's where I'm at. If you just own up to it. Don't we in this country like people who are honest and put it out there about some of the stuff they've gone through in their life? Because it makes you more endearing. I don't know why more people don't do that.
I agree with you. So let's talk about you being in the media world for the last 20 plus years. And your job is to get information, get details, get behind the scenes info. And what you just mentioned was when it happened to you, it was almost like an invasion of your privacy. So how do you sync that up with NFL players and athletes that television and announcers are broadcasting their every move on game day? No one follows me around to work, okay? And so, if you work at the post office or at the insurance company or the bank, you don't have people doing that. And then everything they do off the field, good, bad, and indifferent, gets reported on. So where's that happy medium or that balance between the public's right to know and the player's right to privacy?
Let's put it this way. Anything we do off the field, whether you're in the media or you're an athlete, if it's negative, it's going to get out there. And if you do something like when team personnel, if they do, let's talk about sexual harassment or something like that off the field, which is bad. If you do something stupid and you may regret it, you got drunk, you act like a moron, that's on you, man. You should know better. Like, I was brought up the right way. I just don't do stuff like that. I would never even think of it. I get it. Men or women, they drink, they go through things, they do something stupid. By the way, you control how you act. So that's the thing. I don't make excuses for people, even for friends of mine who get into trouble, do stupid stuff like that. Not stupid, it's just wrong. You got to own up to it. And, as far as you're saying, okay, is it right that it gets out there? I would rather not have my personal life, out there, but if it's something that I did dumb, I get it. But you know what, again, you control the narrative. That's the thing that we need to understand as a country. We control, because quite frankly, if you do everything the right way, you don't have nothing to worry about. If you do something that's bad, well, whose fault is that? And you know what? I think there's a line. Like, if there's a domestic case and a couple had a problem, now, if it affects your ability to do your job as an NFL player, I'm probably going to report on it if I get the information. Now, I'm going to make sure it's right. Obviously, you have to get the story right. But, if a player punched a woman, I'm going to report on it. Not just for morally it's wrong, it's a reportable story because the guy could get suspended. So to answer your question, each situation is different, but more often than not, I'm probably going to report it if it's reportable. That's kind of the fine line as a reporter. You have to make a decision. A failed drug test, failing, depends what it is. But I know you and I have talked about this over the years. We've talked about situations your players have gone through. I may call you on and say, hey, I'm hearing, is this true? You may or may not confirm it for me, but if you confirm it, let me throw this back at you. If it's about one of your clients and I know something that's not positive, you may want to control the narrative. Now, you can't control me, but you might ask me, hey, listen, I'd rather this not get out, but I know you got to do your job. How tough is that for you?
Well, that puts us in a huge dilemma.
Right.
Okay. I think there's multiple issues here, but the thing that when you try to balance the public's right to know and the player's right to privacy, the dividing line you just described is their behavior. At that point in time, when they cross the line and they do something stupid, they do something immoral, they do something that's reportable, it's going to be a media frenzy, and they've lost control of their narrative. If they make good decisions, have great behavior, the media can scrutinize them as much as they want, but there's nothing to report.
I would say this: if it's a really good player who typically is really, really well respected and well liked, who for the first time in his career did something dumb, it probably will get reported, but in terms of social media, he won't get skewered. But the problem is you may look at that guy differently now, because as we're learning in our country, these public figures have double lives. Like, we're not getting other people into this thing, we're learning about it, and that's what's sort of good about social media, though I have certain questions about it, or just the way we're reporting these days. You're eventually going to learn something about someone that you probably don't want to hear about, but as you were bringing up, it may be someone's job to report it. Now, it's the other part of this. What really does the public need to know? It's not just the right to know. Do they really need to know some of the stuff? That the Robert Kraft situation. Okay, he's a public figure. He's an owner. I'm not taking sides here. I mean, my wife and I have talked about it. I've talked to friends in the league about it. I think when you look at it, it's a public's right to know. This guy's a public figure. Now you could say, look, what he did, or is alleged to have done, because we don't know for sure if he did it, is illegal in Nevada or in Las Vegas, somewhere in Nevada. Okay, it's highly embarrassing. Should that be reported? I think it should be, because this guy's a public figure. He did something that's alleged. Well, what did he alleged to have done is illegal. So guess what? That to me is reportable. That's that.
Well, one of the things that's happened in the media, and this has been going on for some time now, is that the accused is guilty until proven innocent.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
And it would be really cool if we could turn that around. It's just not where it's at.
Court of public opinion, my friend. That's
so
unfortunate.
Robert Kraft is guilty. Whether he did it or not, he's guilty until he can prove a negative that he didn't do it. So at the end of the day, I really feel like public figures have to hold themselves to a higher standard to avoid that guilty before innocent situation.
How do you do that?
Great behavior.
All the time, 100%
All the
time, right?
If you're gonna make a lot of money and you're gonna be in the public's eye, you have to know that responsibility comes with that role.
With greater money, greater responsibility comes. Yeah. Look, if you're going to drink with your friends, drink responsibly. Don't act like a jackass. And generally in the 20s is where you get concerned about people, because I know the way I was. I needed to grow up a little bit in my 20s. But man, what we brought up, some of the things that kids have to deal with now, social media, dating apps. I couldn't even imagine being single now. And all the things that go on with people, and a lot of professional athletes are dealing with the same things, by the way, we're dealing with. Look, if you think like, I hosted an event with Zach Ertz for his foundation. And I mean, in 2016, he went through something very serious. He had an issue with the Bengals in the Bengals game where he missed a block. It looked like he didn't make an effort. And he got skewered in social media by fans. And not only that, the media went after him, which he really should do as a media member. And it hurt him. And that's the negative part of social media. Now, okay, he didn't do anything wrong off the field. Zach does everything the right way. I think he missed a block. Okay, it happens. But people are questioning his effort. Now, how in the world, if you're not him, how do you question the effort? Now, the tape shows you, as you know, being an agent, you know about coaching tape. The tape looked like it was questionable. He made the effort. But the good thing in the end of that story is it actually helped Zach focus a little bit better. Believe it or not, not that he totally agreed with everyone. Made him look at his career a little differently. That was a positive story, which was very negative in the beginning with social media. But this is not related to sports, but the bullying that goes on in social media, I mean, it's awful. You have to understand what's going on in our country. And I'm not bringing up certain people, but a lot of people are angry right now. And you've got to be able to focus on what matters to you and your family.
Adam, why don't you share some insight on what do you think the next trend is going to be in the NFL? And this is a very broad question. There's no right and wrong answer. Is there going to be a market shift of some nature? Does the impending CBA extension or negotiation before it's extended. Are you hearing things that might be happening that have never happened before?
I think technology is really big. You're just seeing over the last couple of years, we know about analytics, that's been around forever. It was a fancy name for statistics, but we're in broad-based analytics now. But I think technology, being able to measure just about everything, because baseball, as you know, has been really advanced in that area. Football's lagged behind. I think technology is going to get better. I was at a sports gambling technology conference last June in Philly, and what the NBA is doing with what's called Shot Tracker. What now we have in the NFL is we have wearable technology. Zebra does it. They do a great job. My friend John Pollard was involved in it. But I think more in the technology end, I think we're going to get better because we want more predictable analysis. That's what Major League Baseball has. We're not getting it in the NFL yet. We're inching there, but we're not there. And I think that's big. I think technology is big. What else could be sort of the trend? Well, the big recent trend is, okay, I'm going to give you something. This year's trend in the NFL and coaching was to get mostly younger. I think 6 out of the 8 or 9 head coaches were younger, guys in their 30s, and they want the next quarterback developer. But what they're seeing is not everyone can be Sean McVay. You're going to see that this season. I'm not going to criticize some of these guys who were hired, but the fact of the matter is you have to look at the guy's pedigree and his success as a coordinator or assistant coach. Because what happens is the league now is failing in that they're just identifying what they think the trend is to go younger. Younger does not always mean better. Experience matters, and I think we're learning that. Andy Reid on his second chance, when he was the Eagles head coach at I think 41 years old, that was really the perfect age. Gets fired from the Eagles, and then he revives his career in his 50s. I mean, who says life can't begin in your 50s as an NFL coach? He got reinvented. Yeah, Bruce Arians, unbelievable, right? So experience matters to me, and I think we'll see. Time will tell. I think there are going to be some big-time failures in this group of head coaches because I think some of them are not ready, but they got put up there because of this recent trend of, well, we want the next Sean McVay. Folks, there's only one Bill Belichick. Why do you think so many of these ex-Belichick people have failed? Because they either try to be him or they're not him. There's only one Belichick and there's only one Sean McVay.
I lied to you. I have 2 more questions.
Of course.
That's a great answer, by the way. If you were a GM of an NFL team and you wanted to build a championship and win a Super Bowl, give me, as a CEO of an organization, what your ingredients would be.
I want a leader. I want a leader of men. I want people who know when this guy comes in the room, he's the leader. Now, I read Warren Littlefield's book. He wrote about the rise and fall of must-see TV. He was the guy who created must-see TV. I like his style of leadership. I want everyone to know who the boss is, but I want your input. I don't have all the answers. I think that's the best part of leadership. The people know who they are. They're comfortable in their own skin. They want everyone to know, because you have to have one leader. But I want input. I can't see everything. Tell me what I'm not seeing. What do you need to be? What do you need from me to be great? And I think Doug Peterson, the Eagles head coach, does that. The so-called emotional intelligence. Doug was a guy that was a pretty good journeyman backup quarterback. He was never a really good starter. But he picked up so many things from Mike Holmgren, Brett Favre, all the coaches and people who work with Andy Reid. He's today's coach to me. You have to understand today's player. He's not like 70, so he's 50 years old. He gets today's player. He's got kids in his family, so he knows this age group. They want to be respected. They want to be listened to. They want to know what they need to be great. I think Doug, while he turned around his coaching career, 2016 was not very good. 2017, talking to the Eagles, he got tougher, but he's still respectful. He listens. He's got the players told me he's got a line you can't cross, but you could push it with him. So understanding who you are as a person and being able to lead by example and get people to buy into your message, that is really, you've got to be you, and that's all part of it. I think some of these guys, some of these NFL coaches, when they're trying to be somebody else, you got to be you. Because in the end, if you're not yourself, because if you're going to go down, you better be going down as yourself. And I think what happens is something happens to these head coaches. They really well liked and well respected before they get it. And sometimes they get these head coaching jobs and they change because they think they have to be somebody different. No, be yourself. That's what got you there in most cases. So I think leadership is number one. Everyone, and part of that is you got to make sure they know who the boss is. They're not going to walk all over you, but be flexible and adaptable. If you can do that in today's society with all that we have to deal with, and if you're going to be a head coach in the National Football League, a leader of men, you got to be flexible because there's so many things happen, as you know, being involved in football for decades. Things happen that are out of your control. It's not just injuries, it's off the field issues. It's dealing with all the things that come at you. And the other part of it, and we're learning this is an underrated part of being a head coach, get a great staff. Put a great staff together of teachers. And a lot of the staffs that fail are not good. They're just not good at what they do, and that's why they fail in the end.
You made a great point that I've seen over the years, where I've known a young man, I've known someone for 5, 10, 15 years, and he gets the opportunity to be a GM, and he changes. And most of the time they fail. What is it that's so addictive about the limelight of performing in the NFL as a coach or GM that causes people to change? What do you think the driving force behind that?
So I think what happens to these guys, and I know what you're talking about, some of these GMs are head coaches. I think they put up a wall because they don't want anyone to infiltrate their area, so to speak. Like, they want to control the narrative. And I'll give you something Chris Ballard said to me, the Colts GM. He said, it was either last summer or the summer before at the training camp, we were just talking about information. He's like, look, I know it's going to get out. It's not going to hurt our football team, so I'm going to make sure I talk about it. Let me get it out in front, whether a reporter asks about it privately and he may confirm it. He'll go, look, it's going to get out there. He's a pragmatist. I like people who are pragmatists. What that means is things are going to be like they should be. Don't overdo it. Don't overreach. Just be yourself. I think they decide, like, okay, now I'm a head coach, now I'm going to shut everyone off. No, why would you change? Being a good person should be a way of life. It should be something you have to acquire. I think this is what happens with these guys. They think they have to act like a certain way when we're in the big chair, that's what I call it, where they're the head coach or the GM, and they more often than not will fail when they try to be tougher or they try to change. Like, there's certain things you have to change because your personality, when you coach players, you have to see what they need. Like, each team is different, each organization is different, depending on what you're inheriting. I remember talking to one general manager over the years who walked into kind of the hornet's nest. The team was in complete disarray. He had to be tough with them the first year. He said I had to be a little bit more of a jerk than I've ever been in my life, but they needed it. And then he goes, once I thought that they got the discipline that was needed, then I relaxed a little bit, and I relaxed the rules. We had a players committee, but as you know, each situation is different when you take over as a leader, but in the end, you have to be yourself. If you have to change who you are, there's zero chance you'll be successful.
Now I want to plug a fantastic book co-authored by Gary Chapman, who is a New York Times bestseller with the book 5 Love Languages, and by one of my close friends, Clarence Schuler. Their book, Choose Greatness, dives into the 11 critical choices every young man makes and how these young men can make the right choices so they can get on the path to greatness. I have seen in my time many NFL players mess up their careers, lives, and marriages because they lack guidance when they were younger. I wish I could have given them this book because after reading it, I have no doubt it would have helped them avoid their pains and given them a GPS path to greatness. You have an opportunity to help the teens in your life choose greatness. You can pick up a copy of Choose Greatness by Gary Chapman and Clarence Schuler at Amazon.com. Couldn't say that any better. The thing that the person you bring up, Chris Ballard, a year ago had the biggest egg on his face of any GM in recent memory.
Wasn't his fault, though. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I agree. And so, he thinks he has a coach, announces he has a coach, and then the coach does a 180 on him with Josh McDaniel. But karma comes in, and he gets a guy that maybe is going to perform better and took their team to the playoffs, and they have a very bright future. So I think, Chris is a very humble, down-to-earth guy, wants to make good decisions. It's not too big for him. He's in a position where he's got talent. He's got a franchise quarterback who performing like they hope he would after a couple years of subpar performances or injuries. But it's like even if you do everything right and you're a good guy, sometimes things out of your control happen and you could be embarrassed and humiliated. But if you stick to who you are, you'll recover.
That's the way I think Ballard handled it. He kind of knew that he was going to do things the right way, as you were talking about, so he'd eventually get to where he wanted to. Now, let's talk about Frank Reich for a second. Frank Reich was not even on their list of, as I understand it, he was never on their lists. He was suggested to them. And they were in a bind here because it was all in. They knew literally first week of January it was going to be Josh McDaniels, and Josh pulled out after a verbal agreement. He never signed his contract, but he backed out. Unfortunately, they announced it without him signing the contract. So they made a joke out of it when they hired Frank Reich. They said, "Hey, he signed his contract," which is smart. Yeah, they were playing along with it, which is smart. You make light of a tough situation. So Chris is so humble, and the thing that has helped him, you look at who he's worked for. I mean, Jerry Angelo and all the and with John Dorsey and all these great leaders and good people and good men, it's going to rub off on you. And talking to people close to him, he's such a great guy. You know him, so I'm not surprised that he's doing well. I'm a little bit surprised that Frank Reich did as well as he did, because he was a guy no one had interest in being a head coach. Well, quite frankly, guess what? No other team had interest in Doug Peterson. Zero. In fact, I met Doug at the 15 owners meetings in Arizona and Phoenix, and I was like, what are you doing here? He said, I'm here for the coaching seminar. We guys who want to be head coaches, we have for future head coaching candidates, we kind of learn. And he's like, I know I won't be a head coach for probably down the line. Guess what? He became a head coach the next year. You never know. It's a funny business. And again, in my 20 years, the guys who fail, it's almost all common. Either they're trying to be someone who they're not, or they're not seeing the big picture. And when you don't know what's going around in your own building, that's another problem. When you don't quite, when I had a running joke with the team, when I know more about your building than you do, that's not a good thing. I should not know that. But it's true, it's happened to me in my career because I'm talking to everybody.
Circling back to talking about the coaching pool, the candidates for coaches, and the hot commodity this year was young quarterback. So anybody that came within a touch of the quarterback was hot.
Right,
okay?
Right.
But you just mentioned two very successful young coaches in terms of their experience in Philly and in Indy that both were
actually not young.
They're not young, but they're young in terms of being a head coach.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
First time ever, yep.
However, the common denominator is that they were a backup quarterback in the NFL.
Yes.
They had to be prepared to be QB1 every Sunday, holding a clipboard, but everybody in the stands didn't want them to play.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so the valuable lessons they learned, the ability to be the guy when they weren't the guy, the ability to win over the locker room when really nobody wanted them to play. I think those life skills and those lessons they learned as players carry over to being leaders of men, leaders of the locker room, and have contributed to them being successful as coaches. So if I was an owner and I was looking for
That's a good idea.
my next head coach, I would look for a backup quarterback, Darrell Bevel, people like that.
Sure.
That they have that. Who's the dude on every team? It's always the quarterback.
Backup quarterback, right? Always, yeah.
Right?
Who's the leader? Is the quarterback. Sure. So yeah, I agree with that. I think you make a good point. That's probably a good idea. Now you got to start identifying those guys, but you guys have to know if they want to coach. Obviously, you talk to their agent, but yeah, that it doesn't surprise me. What surprised me is Reich had so much success early, and obviously having Andrew Luck. But I could tell you that talking to the Eagles, they weren't really sure. They loved the guy personally, they loved him to death, but they weren't sure because he didn't have a lot of responsibility for the Eagles. He sort of a mentor to the quarterbacks, but he's smart, and I think you're onto something. These guys have to prepare for that job because they're one injury away from playing, so they have to have so much knowledge and gather it, and they have to study, and they have to be ready at a moment's notice. And I mean, it's really true. And Doug Peterson, Frank Reich were great examples of it. I'll be interested to see. Now you bring this up. Now it's something I'm going to look at now for next year's crop.
Well, something that I think that fans don't realize is that QB2 is more difficult than QB1 because in practice all week long, QB1 takes all the reps. Okay, QB2 has to be prepared without the reps. And so as a head coach, that kind of preparation, that kind of detail, that kind of leadership, because who's the guy that holds most QB1s accountable? It's QB2.
Exactly right. In fact, it's funny you say it. So there was a team that was looking at Colin Kaepernick like a year ago, and I was talking to them, and they're like, you know what? We think he could help us. We think he's still young enough, but will he challenge the starter? Most people don't know this. Like when you talk to coaches, it's not necessarily that they want someone who will push the guy to be the starter. Is the guy equal in talent? The backup is almost always not as good, but they want someone who works hard and in the classroom environment is going to challenge. And not every talented backup will do that. They're in it for themselves. They just want to be started. I don't know Colin Kaepernick. I've heard actually mostly very good things. Chip Kelly, I'm told, spoke very well when the Seahawks called him. Chip gave him a very strong recommendation. But I had one team tell me, he said, look, we don't know because he wants to be a starter so badly. He wants to start again. Will he be willing to accept just being a backup? And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. If you think, and I don't know Kaepernick, so I haven't had this conversation with him, but if you think like a starter all the time that you don't want to be a backup, then you probably wouldn't accept that role. But this team never spoke to him, so they don't know. So they might have been wrong about that. But that's the thing about the backup position. It's a leadership position. You have to be willing to accept your role. You want to work hard and set the right example. But the thing is, though, as we know in football, you know football better than most. If you're not talented and you get the starting job, it's probably going to show. And Kaepernick, who knew, I had no idea he was going to be as good as he was, but his situation is very unique, obviously. But the backup quarterback position, for the fans out there, it's very, very unique. You never really know when you get your chance, and when you get your chance, you got to make the most of it.
Are you enjoying the podcast interviews we do here at Pro Mindset? Then head on over to Bob Rourke's Business Leaders Podcast at businessleaderspodcast.com to hear more interviews like ours, as Bob meets with business leaders from across Colorado to uncover their secrets to success. You'll learn about success in a variety of industries. His podcast will inspire, motivate, and introduce you to the tools and disciplines of elite business leaders. Guests enjoy being on the show because it's informal, wide-ranging, friendly, and candid. Listen, learn, and succeed. Kaepernick was good enough that the San Francisco 49ers shipped a number one draft pick, the first pick in the draft to Kansas City. So at some level, the guy's got some talent.
Oh, immense, yeah.
Right?
Immense.
Final question. Share for us, we're at the Combine, we're going to have Pro Days coming up next month. We've got the draft, which the fans are very excited about the draft. The teams are very excited about the draft. Cheap labor, new blood, fill needs, all these things. What is if you could share with the rookies, let's say the rookies are out here today, all 338 guys that are here in Indy today, what will they most typically underestimate about what's coming? What will they underestimate about what the NFL is really about?
All that they're asked to do. Nutrition, sleep, media, all the responsibilities. It's not just the Combine where you're going through medical tests. I'm talking about everything that they're going to have to deal with the first couple years in their career. All the challenges, making sure you do everything right, the spotlight. Because when you're in college, though, social media will catch some of these situations, not everything. A lot of that could be hidden. Now you're really in the spotlight because it is the National Football League. It is the number one sports league in America. The spotlight's going to go on you. They don't quite understand what they're up against. I think I've noticed it over my career when talking to players privately. They didn't know quite what they were walking into. Now, in some communities, like if you were playing Jacksonville, you're really under the radar. I had one personnel guy who told me he interviewed for a job there. He called it the Bermuda Triangle. He's like, look, no one knows I'm here, which sometimes is a good thing. You're in anonymity, that's fine. But if you play for the Jets or Giants, good luck. If you're a first-round pick, the spotlight's going to be on you. It's not going to leave. So be ready to do your best. Filter out all of the stuff that doesn't matter, the extraneous, as I've called it. Because if you can't do that, your talent may not show because you're letting everything get to you. So I think you have to be ready to be a professional, and that's the other part is, managing players. It's now a business. When you're 21, it's crazy to say that. I never went through that as a kid. I was just trying to earn a living, but I wasn't an athlete. Now it's a business. And as you know, trying to get player contracts, man, it's a cold business. It could be a cold business at times. When the team tells you that they don't want you back, they're not going to extend your contract, that's insulting, man. It's no different than when you get laid off. I don't care what they tell you. When you're let go with almost 2 years left in your contract, like I was at ESPN, I signed my last extension there. I mean, they might have told me they wanted me back, but Disney might have said another thing. Who knows? But it's tough. It's tough. You got to be ready for all these things that are thrown at you.
So it's a business, no question about it. You have to be a pro's pro. And I can attest to the fact that over many years of working with teams, somewhere around 80% of the conversations are negative. Oh, bro, your guy got hurt. We got to put him on IR. Hey, we're going to let him go. Hey, we're not interested anymore. Hey, would you mind taking a pay cut so he can stick around? It just seemed like...
Yeah, why would they call you, by the way, unless they want to extend his contract, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it's going to be positive, it's going to be an extension, and we're going to be calling them,
they're not going
to call us.
Right, it sounds like the GMs, hey, by the way, I want to tell you, Charlie had a great game. Well, you watched, you would know that anyway. They're not going to call you to tell you that. Has that ever happened in your career?
No.
Maybe text you, maybe, hey, man, by the way, your guy did well?
No.
Unbelievable. That's a shame.
It's a shame that the tenor of most conversations is negative.
That's disappointing,
man. We have this funnel where 90 guys start at the beginning of the year, and we end up with 53, and that 53 turns over multiple times. At least the bottom of the roster's churned probably 10 or 15
times. By the way, you have Rob Ninkovich. Okay, here's a guy that bounced around his career. He never made it really until he went to New England. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So think about how many of those conversations you had with the Saints, Dolphins. Was there a point where you said, man, I just don't know if he's going to get there? I mean, I love Robbie. He's a good player, but he's not making it. I can't control this situation. It's up to him. And then when he finally made it, did you breathe a sigh of relief? Or you're like, okay, well, eventually he's not going to make it? Like, how did you handle that?
Rob Ninkovich's story is very unique because he was cut 4 times before he was signed by Belichick. And when he signed with Belichick, he got the minimum, no signing bonus, no guarantee, and hey, if you get hurt, we're going to pay you less, split deal. And by Thanksgiving of that year, they're calling me and wanting to give him an extension. And we ended up with $350,000 of extra cash, which is no money in the whole scheme of things in the NFL, but that was huge money for him. because it was finally a stamp of approval and like, hey, dude, we like you. You've made it. You're valuable. You're contributing to this organization. But almost everything that happened before that, we don't have time to talk about all of it, but it was get kicked in the teeth, get kicked in the nuts, get the door slammed in your face over and over and over again by people, some people that didn't belong in the positions they had, but by some people that are going to be in Canton because they're hellacious coaches and they just misread or misevaluated Rob.
And then you said I call it fired as a player. You were fired 4 times, so you never gave up. I mean, it's awesome. It's a testament. Then he signed I remember, a fairly significant deal later on. And I mean, Troy Brown, what he went through. I mean, the resiliency of NFL players is just amazing to me. I really admire that. It's no different in life, man. You get knocked down, you got to keep going. What choice do you have? You could either go back or go forward. I always choose to go forward. I
want to thank Adam today for joining me.
Sure, my pleasure.
Pro Mindset Podcast. You're a wealth of information. Love to have you on possibly in the future.
Anytime.
And I want to wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. 5 stars, of course. You can follow us on our website, ProMindsetPodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.